Today we're going to be talking about vetting. I'm going to be keeping it short because it's either a very short matter of checking 5 or 6 things, or if you're in the SIA industry or for some reason you've got to comply with BS 7858, for example, as we have to do, then it's quite a long discussion and you should contact support and talk to your consultant and see how you're going to configure it. Nevertheless, there is a very, very important reason why we should consider this subject, because the quality of our people at its simplest is going to be part of the reputation that our companies have built up over, in many of your cases, many, many years. So let's start right at the top. Identity and trust. There is absolutely no point in vetting somebody, looking up their references, finding if they have a criminal record, seeing if they have rights to work in the UK, unless you can actually prove their identity. So it's very important to have an audit trail, especially if you ever have the huge pleasure that I have had with a couple of HMRC audits. Multiply the fear of those by 10, and you're getting somewhere close to what it's like to have what used to be the UK Border Agency audit you. We have in the past been a licensed staff labour provider for Asian programmers, for example, and what's now the UK Border Agency, now the Home Office, have a very, very frightening audit process. So the rights to work thing, the fines are high, and it's extremely important that you can demonstrate to auditors, if you are ever unlucky enough to be chosen for one of these audits by the Home Office, as it's now called, you do need to know the identities of not just any foreign staff you may have employed, but also your own staff. And it doesn't help to say, for example, we've got a chap called Dave who's worked for us for more than 20 years now, and we know his parents. Most kids in the area know his parents because they're both teachers. We know 3 or 4 generations, I think, of his family, his brother, and goodness knows what else. We know he lives in Bracknell. He doesn't have a passport. And that doesn't cut any ice with the 2 ladies who came to audit us from the Home Office. So having some sort of identity, so that you can trust that the person who is working for your company is the person they say they are, is absolutely critical to this. And being able to keep that identity on file with a signed piece of paper of the officer who checked their face to face, and let's say their passport or their driving license, is very important for auditors. Rights to work, you'll be aware of the fines. I'm not going to go into that anymore, but clearly there are certain conditions under which you can employ people from outside of the European community or the UK now, and those conditions will include visas, student visas, perhaps long-term working visas, short-term rights to work. And you need to be able to check those. You need to be able to check those against the governing body. Now that deals with most of the compliance and the kind of basics of ID, but also you need to be able to check the quality of people that are coming. Now, if you hire lots and lots of temp people and they're basically going to stand there and hand out leaflets, there's a certain level of quality that it will be worth your while investing in, except obviously that any one of those people could, and I have lots of case studies from clients where 1 or 2 of those people have either behaved in an appalling fashion or been rude to spectators or customers. In those situations, they can obviously have a very detrimental effect on your company's reputation that you've spent a long time building up. Nevertheless, there are some important quality factors that everybody should have a look at. Not everybody can take references. In the security companies, if you're working with the SIA, you will certainly want to do all of the references that are necessary: 5 years of employment history, 5 years of residential history. You'll want the full proof of ID and proof of address and various other things. But quality is really important in terms of blocking an applicant. If you have sacked an applicant for poor behavior or perhaps for dishonesty or something, then we have made sure in the system that as that applicant tries to reapply, you can dedupe, and most people dedupe on email, but a lot of people over the last 10 years have started to add to that national insurance number and date of birth, so that if you try to reapply, you might get on to work for one of your agencies, but you're sure as eggs are eggs not going to get paid, because you would have had to falsified your national insurance number as well. But at least making people apply with their email name does give you a certain level of deduplication, and somebody who applies twice will probably have the same cell phone number but a slightly different email name that they have created in order to bypass the system, and that's quite easy to detect. So the applicant blocking is very important, but it's also important to make sure that your staff are trained to have a job application status of sabbatical or would re-employ if somebody goes away for 6 months and then wants to come back and work for you. And it's probably, you wouldn't actually retire them fully, you just put their job application status as would re-employ. But it's very important to have a job application status for these tiny minority of people that if you hire enough staff, statistically you will find, where you don't want to re-employ them. I think sacked or bad apple are now not the correct words to use. Certainly we would have been more free with our vocabulary when I started work, and you found a wallet missing in the office or something. But the nature of the vocabulary now is whether or not you would re-employ them. And that brings up another subject in vetting, which is how long are you allowed to keep that data about a person. If we had a situation that some of my clients have described to me, they have actually changed their job contracts and their privacy agreements with staff, their data privacy agreements with staff, data retention agreements with staff, where they say, if you have not worked for us, we'll keep your information on record for a year, because that season may come up again and you may be able to be a steward at that music festival next year perhaps, and most staff would agree with that. If you work for us, we need to keep your information on file for 6 years for HMRC reasons. But it's well worth, when you review your contracts and the image rights clauses in your contract, so you can take pictures of staff working for you to help advertise them and your company and win more work for everybody. It's well worth saying, if you leave with a bad reputation, if you do something bad, then we reserve the right to keep you on and your email and other identifying information on for longer, because we want to make sure that we don't re-employ you. And it's well worth making sure that that's now written into your or probably already voluminous data protection side. Lastly, I'm just going to be talking very quickly about vetting and doing a demo, but the main thing about BS 7858 is it's a big old subject. Talk to support about it. I'll show a couple of diagrams about how complex, if anybody else is interested in it, but the main idea is please do talk to support. And that's if you're in the security industry or another industry that requires BS 7858. If not, the reason that you should be listening to just a 5 or 10 minute demo of how vetting works now in the system and how you can use it is because if you do all this blue work to win a contract, and you get up here and you've won a contract, and then you have the best run organization in the world with a fantastic team organizing people to go out and do the work on behalf of that customer, it only takes 1 or 2 people to wreck your reputation. And just as an example, the example I might have mentioned yesterday, one of the first experiential companies we ever went to see, maybe 10, 12 years ago, was in Weybridge. I remember it very, very well because I went to Weybridge on Saturday evening for a meal. I remember this guy, when we went to visit him, he said, I did want to buy your system, but I think my company is actually going to go bust because our biggest customer, and my recollection is, I think it was Andrex, and I think the individual concerned had behaved lewdly when the manager from this huge brand, his biggest customer, had gone to mystery shop them in the Metro Centre in Newcastle. And this guy was sitting down there in Weybridge with his head in his hands. He knew he had got to compensate them for several £1,000s. And I'll leave it to your imagination what this one individual had done. He was a guy in his late teens, no real investment in the company. He was just doing a bit of part-time work, and he was behaving like an idiot. But this manager from this huge brand had actually taken his family and his children and witnessed this stuff firsthand. So one person who you could perhaps have checked out beforehand, at least you know their identity, you can check their references and make sure you avoid that. And if you have hired them and you've made a mistake, Most clients will understand that. What they won't understand is if they somehow sneak in again. And we have experience of in years gone by, there used to be a particular individual. Every single database that we pulled in from the experiential community, this guy who'd been fired appeared to have been fired from every single experiential company in London and the home counties. And we're talking 30 or 40 companies. So it's well worth checking those kind of bad apples out and make sure that you may not be able to call them that now, but it's well worth making sure that you don't hire them. So this is quite a complex diagram here, BS7858, which is why I've not included it in this presentation or not included a discussion about it. If you do need BS7858, please do give us a call, because we can implement the whole system for you quite easily. And what I'm going to focus in on now is something which everybody will find relevant, which is when you actually meet these people. So you've got lots of people who you're going to induct into your company, and we've looked at how e-learning can help to develop them and to test them. But what we're looking at today is when you do those induction workshops, or you meet the people for the first time, or you bring them in for a training, 30 or 40 at a time at hotels around the country before enacting the contract for the customer, we're looking at how you can check them through their vetting. So without further ado, in this blue box here, I've written vetting, but we've not really spent a lot of time on it when we've looked at the journey of these staff members who get employed by you before they actually get to be employed by you. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at a couple of features which help when you're going through that vetting process, so that you've got an auditable, controllable management vetting system, and an auditor can come in, but also you can be comfortable that the people that you're employing are the right people. So I think I'll start by getting onto the staff demo system here. One of the right-hand menu items, if you get the full vetting, I mean, you can do this with job application status as well, and other reports that you have. But on the full vetting system, you have a list. I'm just going to actually cancel that because I was messing around with it. It's bringing up more information. On the full vetting system, it brings up a list of all of the staff that you're putting through vetting at the moment. So here's my list of staff that are going through, and you can see you've got the basic contact details and their photos coming up here. You need that because you would probably be looking at this screen whilst you were either doing a Zoom interview with them, or more likely they've come in for one of your workshops, induction workshops, especially if you're in the security industry, but also if you're in any kind of experiential industry, you might have some sort of induction workshop or experiential workshop with them to check them out. And you get an opportunity there to be able to ask them to show you the original of their passport and their driving license and a proof of address, and to be able to photograph them on your phone. And then, as you'll see in a moment, you can tick them as an induction manager, as an interviewer, and then somebody who is running your vetting can tick them as well to say that they've seen it. So this person comes up to you. She either looks like that or she doesn't. She's got different color hair, that's fine. But if she's a completely different bone structure, different height, clearly a different person, then you realize that you've got an ID problem. So it becomes very, very obvious. To make that work, let's just take this person here where we've actually got some demo data. You would look at their details, and once again, this can all be done on a tablet. So if they bring to you so you've got proof of address and identity documents, and when you add a file, if you click on this button here, then on your phone, now clearly I've got some files on here, but on your phone, what it would show you is either where do you want to get these files from on this add file button, or it would say, do you want to take a picture? And obviously you would take a picture of the person's passport. You would also probably take this picture again, because you've actually then got the person and their passport in front of you, and you can make sure they are the person who's turned up for the interview and is physically in front of you is the same person as on the passport, or is enough of a likeness for you to give the confidence. Clearly, if they are not of a likeness, if it's a 10-year-old passport, you could make a judgment on that. and it's just about to be renewed. But if they're not of a likeness, then you'll smell a rat and you'll see what the problem is. So you also have an audit trail, so you can see who they were interviewed by. This person here is at the job application status interview because they've been through. They've given them a contact status while they've been there as well. And there would be other information which I haven't particularly bothered pulling in here, but there would be lots of other information. So you've then got the ability to quickly on a tablet, click, pick up their proof of address, and if they brought a utility bill or a bank statement along, you'll be able to see also their utility. You can see a utility bill and a bank statement here. I mean, obviously these are not real ones, or this might be an Accelerate one if it's HSBC, I'm not sure, but clearly they're bank statements. Now, if you're a security company, you may also want to look at 5-year employment history and a 5-year address history. If you're a field marketing company, there may not be any worth in doing that unless the field marketing people that you're dealing with are perhaps dealing with cash, or maybe they have valuable equipment to carry around or something like that. It may be that a customer does ask you for that. It may not be. It may be that you want to check that for team leaders and senior people or your own internal staff, but not for staff that are just going to hand out leaflets or count stock in a shop or something. Although having said that, any one of those people can very easily wreck your reputation if you do discover them to be dishonest. In addition to that, there will be character references. Now, if you're interested in how all of these things work, I'll just give a brief demo of how they work. So this one here is 5-year address history. Above there's a 5-year employment history. And those are the things, if you remember from the application form builder, you can put multiple jobs on. Those are the multiple fields on your application form builder. So if this person has had 2 areas of it, 2 jobs, you can go and add, when they fill in their application form, they can fill in those 2 jobs and the start date and the end date and the contact form. And just to show you how this works, the 5-year employment history, if I click on this here, this button here, it creates me, I've closed my Outlook so it doesn't disturb me, but it creates an email. Yes, it creates an email anyway. Apparently it opens Outlook, so I'll have to close that. So you'd put your own wording on this, but clearly it goes to that guy, Rick, because he was, if I wait for the refresh to go away, he was, where we are, Rick Marengo was the reference, this fella here, and that's his email address at whatever company name, Accelerate. So it says, please could you confirm that Helen Tilbury, this is the lady that we're doing the reference for, worked for your company, Accelerate, for the period, blah, 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 etc. And that would be done both as orally during the process and also as an email. So even if you're not in that business, it's nice to know that if you are talking to a doorman on a pub or somebody is looking at your CCTV as you go into a university or some sort of secured building or an airport or something, that they will have gone through that kind of vetting and they will be trained, and they're not just somebody's private army, as was the case before the beginning of these highly regulated industries when Al Capone, and we've all seen the films. Now, in addition to all of the standard vetting, you can add some lookups down here that you can check. Now, we've added some pretty silly things here, like t-shirt size, but you probably, if the work that you provide for customers does involve driving or driving colleagues to an event or something, you might want to ask, have you got more than 6 points? And you might also check their driving license hasn't got 6 points on it as you do that. I think some of the other interview questions are a bit fatuous. I think they were just chosen at random. I mean, have you got a driver's license? Obviously, marital status, probably you wouldn't be able to ask that these days. Visas and work permits are certainly quite relevant ones. But you can create these tabs, as we'll show you when we do lookups admin in the admin course coming up in a couple of days' time. And you can also decide which lookups go in them. The point about the vetting audit, if you're interested in using this, is you have to have 2 people to check it out. So I'm logged in now as administrator, and I can see that just here we have a document, an ID document type 1, type 2. I don't have an ID document 3, but I do have an ID document 4. So you can see there are tick boxes there, and there. And I might say, you know, I don't accept that. I expect to have 4 ID documents here. I actually wouldn't. I would, as a vetting officer here, I would click on that. Now, a different person has to tick to verify that they have seen these documents and they've seen the physical person in front of them. A different person has to verify that to the person who actually signs these acceptances here. And that person, once again, has to be a different person who does the final approval or unapproval. All of the time, if you're working to be a 7858 and you're an SIA company, then you can work the people for up to 12 weeks. If you haven't fully vetted them and passed them within 12 weeks, then they can't work for you. You have to start the vetting process again, I believe, or something. I think also if they go away and don't work for you for 2 or 3 weeks, that then creates a break in their employment history, and you don't know, they could have gone to prison or they could just have gone on holiday. They have to then account for that break in their employment history here. So you can manage the whole process to the level of quality and detail that you wish to. It will be prescribed for you if you are a security company. If you're not a security company, you can at least use this to list people and say, I've checked their identity, I've checked their employment history. And if you are an experiential company and you're handing out leaflets or samples of bars of chocolate, you probably don't care about their employment history and their history of their residence and stuff. But if you are working in any sort of regulated industry, you clearly will. Okay, so that's vetting.